Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, cover all the home teams, the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave coming off a great victory. Of course, we have a great panel, as always, to break it down for you. Ken TRAHAN of WGSO Radio and CrescentCitySports.com, RENE NADEAU of CrescentCitySports.com, and a whole lot more. He's going to tell you all about it right now. And looking forward to, again, a great hour of sports talk with you here on this Thursday night. Guys, welcome to the show. As always, thanks so much for being with us. Kenny, we'll start with you. I know you're involved in a lot of stuff. Congratulations on the website. It's been a great launch for you guys. But tell us a little bit about what you got going on between prep, your shows. Let us know the whole nine yards.
How much time do you have?
We got about 55 minutes.
Okay, then never mind. No, CrescentCitySports.com is the website. Renee is a great contributor to it and does an outstanding job, amongst many others. And we're very pleased with where we are in a very short period of time. And, of course, we champion high school sports, Eric, and we televise games on the web in HD with replay and professional scorebugs each and every week. And in addition to that, we have our scoreboard on Fridays nights, which is where everyone comes in the state on a Friday night because it's updated every minute, and it's every school in the state, every game in the state, not just local teams, which other people do, and God bless them, but we do it all. And we have a myriad of literally a couple of hundred people that are involved in this, and Renee has pinch hit and been part of this at times, so he can certainly vouch for what we do. And it's been a labor of love for 23 years, our original prep football report on WGSO locally and on 9 other stations around the state, school nights on Friday nights as well, and it's been great. And of course, beyond that, it's just full speed ahead with the website and with Prep Sports in particular, running the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation Quarterback Club and running the Saints Hall of Fame Museum. Other than that, I got nothing
going on. And of course, hosting the longest running sports radio show in the market, the Three Tailgaters.
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, we've had a wonderful time with that. You know, it's hard to imagine. We started that, you know, before the turn of the century, and it's had several different iterations. But you know, we're kind of 2.5 right now. But we were blessed with Rick Gailey's presence last week, despite the battle that he has of a lifetime. And our prayers are with him right now, and our thoughts are with my friend. We love you and care about you deeply, and there isn't a day that goes by that we don't pray about you, as we did at our ministry luncheon yesterday.
Amen to that. All of us feel the same way. Renee, welcome back to the show, and I know you're a very busy man as well. Tell us about what you're involved in.
Well, yeah, Crescent City Sports takes a lot of my time, and glad to be with Kenny and the crew. And I remember Kenny and I doing high school football on TV back in the early 90s, and Kenny was doing the radio reports back then on the show, so it started, he was splitting time between TV and radio way back in the early 90s. But I also color analyst, football color analyst on TV, and I work for CBS Radio for some events in New Orleans, particularly New Orleans Saints, and some bowl games, things going on for that, and I've been doing that for 25, 30 years.
Yeah, and you had your eyes on Troy recently, so when we talk about LSU, you know a little bit about
I did a
Troy.
Troy game 2 or 3 weeks ago, yes.
Yeah, so we'll talk a bit about that.
Yes.
Guys, I know I'm tired of talking about it. I know you guys are probably talking about it, but again, we would be remiss if we didn't bring it up right out of the box before we start talking about the Saints. And a great weekend for sports last weekend. You know, I mean, you had obviously the Saints, LSU, and Tulane winning. You had Louisiana Tech on the verge of a big win. I mean, you go right around. Looked like the Falcons were going to lose until that was taken away from it. Almost been a perfect weekend, but it was kind of overshadowed by the NFL anthem protest. And Kenny, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on the protest. Do you think this thing will continue? Just kind of give us your overall.
Well, I got into this as I wrote for the Kenner Star this week because I love games. And I love sports. And I love talking about the games, about the great plays, about the great players, the wonderful stories associated with sports. Became interested as a young man, as an adolescent at that, and was very blessed to be educated and have the opportunity to pursue this as a career. I didn't get into this to talk about this garbage. I didn't get into it to talk about salary caps or about luxury taxes or about the hit that you're going to take as a result of cutting a player or how much a player makes. I don't care what a player makes. It's all about the game and the productivity. And I think the fans are leery of it too. And I think in this particular case, passion has been stoked. It didn't need to be. It was brought up in a rude way, inappropriately, wrong way to do it. It isn't the sentiment that I think people disagree with the president. It's what he did in the forum he did it in that really caused this. Because here's the fact of the matter. This was a dying movement. Yes, it was going away. Yes, and all you did was stoke a fire and create this. And I'm not here to bash Donald Trump at all. I like a lot of the policies he's put forward. I just don't like what he did in this instance. I think it was very poor. But from the standpoint of where I'm at, look, it's real simple. This ought to give you some perspective. My father was a Marine. My father was in the Korean War. My father was also a New Orleans policeman for a period of time. So perhaps that gives you some perspective of where I'm coming from. I have total, complete understanding and respect for people that speak for what they believe in. In fact, I admire them. In fact, I have tremendous admiration for them and respect for them, while I may disagree with them vehemently. And I think that's the problem with society today. We can't have discourse publicly that's civil, that is honest and that is fair, and that isn't name-calling and casting aspersions and calling somebody a racist or a sexist or anything else. It's absurd. People can feel a certain way without being disposed to being something that they're not. And I think that's what this is all about to a degree. We watch what's transpire with these individuals, and I think some of them are misguided. I think some have good intentions. Cam Jordan says what he says, and I respect what he says. Says, I'm singing the words, and I got my hand across my heart. Great. Do you really think that what you're doing is going to evoke change? Do you think it's going to make a difference? From where I said right now, all it's done is evoke anger and create more people that say, I'm not going to watch these games. I'm not going to go to these games. And from a sponsorship perspective, it's a nightmare for owners who, by the way, are the ultimate sources here. They are the ones that have to get involved. Everybody's pointing to the coach or the general manager. I get that. Right. Coach is going to follow the owner's edict. Whatever it is, he's going to do what he's told to do. So in this particular instance, not just Tom Benson, but all owners around the NFL have to get together and say, this is how we're going to handle this. This is what we're going to do moving forward. Otherwise, it's going to be catastrophic. And I don't care how popular football is. There are other things to do. Yes. And there are other sports, too. Yes. And people not only are discovering those or rediscovering them, but they're liking them. And I think that's applicable to other sports, too. Ultimately, it comes down to this. And you and I have talked, and we talked before the show. You've invoked the names of people like, John Carlos. You invoked the name of Jesse Owens. You invoked the name previously of Muhammad Ali. And in these instances, there was a lot to it. First of all, society has changed dramatically, which doesn't mean things are best now. They're better. They've got a long way to do. Social injustice is real. Things that have happened to minorities in particular are completely and dead wrong. And this society needs to continue to change. But is this the way to make it change? Right. By protesting your national anthem? Oh, by the way, go back and look at the game in London last week. It was despicable, and people have spoken about it since, but I spoke about it right away. Jacksonville and Baltimore, sitting and kneeling for the American Star-Spangled Banner and standing for God Save the Queen. Last time I checked, you fought for your independence as a nation. You were created under the guise of being able to escape the tyranny of Great Britain at the time. Even though they're your big ally now, this is your country created out of that for the freedom that you enjoy now. You're going to salute that and not your own country? Right. Again, this isn't about the fact that this country isn't perfect. Of course it's not. This country has a lot of warts, but it's still the best country in the world. And oh, by the way, the individuals that are sitting and kneeling are millionaires and multimillionaires. Jesse Owens didn't get paid. For that matter, neither did John Carlos. So we're talking about a totally different place and time and dynamic. I respect the process. I respect the whole concept of freedom of speech, and I respect what people have to say, but I disagree with the way they're going about it.
Renee?
You know, I'm going to spend about 30 seconds on this because I'm washed out with the whole process, and I agree with what Kenny said. I kind of wish Donald Trump would have said things a little differently.
Or not at all.
Or not at all, perhaps. But the thing is that when you see things that make me kind of turn my stomach, when you see Odell Beckham saying that was part of the protest, acting like a dog, and just it's getting comical or sickening sometimes that you know it's just getting out of hand, completely out of control, and I don't think what was intended to be something from a that they thought they'd accomplished something by this. Now it's gone completely over the other way, and it's put a division with sports and politics. And it's turned so many people off, and it's nothing good is going to come from this. Already, I think it's taken a hit, and not just football. I think basketball and other things, and it's also spilling on down to the youth leagues and things like this. And that's when that happens. People are going to be protesting something they're not even sure what it's all about.
Right, and I've talked about this a lot on the radio show this week. Look, there is social injustice in our country. There is racism in our country. And there's no doubt about that, and we need to do everything we can to be able to change that. All people need to change that. I agree with you. I said this week that I felt that this was a dying movement, that the players had gotten the message. Colin Kaepernick is not on 18. And ultimately, I thought that you'd have a few scattered players that would still be doing it, but for the most part, that the players had moved on. They kind of realized that if they were going to express themselves in some way, they weren't going to do it during the anthem. And then again, the president threw napalm on this. This was done. This was over. And now we're in a situation where, now they have to redefine the movement here. I think people are confused. They don't know, is it about social injustice? Is it about racism? Is it about police brutality? Is it about, again, what the president said in challenging the league? And I agree with you, Kenny. I think it comes down to this. The big four leagues are going to have to figure this out very quickly when it comes to the owners. They're going to have to figure out, how they can allow players to be able to express themselves and to be able to utilize their First Amendment rights, but also preserve the game itself. This is about entertainment. This is a respite for people. They don't want to mix politics in a lot of cases with their sports. And I think ultimately what it's going to come down to is the almighty dollar.
Sure it is. It's a game.
Yes.
It's the business of games. People want to be entertained. They're paying money to go see a game.
Right.
They're not interested.
They're not.
In what your personal feelings are about anything.
If you want to talk politics, there's a way to talk politics.
Absolutely.
And I'll add this. We were talking about some of the great athletes of the past who again, were racially discriminated against and took a stand, rightly, from the Bill Russells to the Muhammad Alis all the way down. Great people, men that literally took a chance with their lives on what they did. But the athletes today have a platform like no other. Social media has opened up a platform where millions of people, every time that they hit a keystroke, they know exactly what they're saying. They could utilize that and mobilize the social media aspect of this to be able to let people know exactly where they stand. You don't need to, again, be able to kneel during the national anthem. You don't need to be in a situation where you're disgracing the flag, or again, those that have fought for us. And I know there's a lot of people that are on both sides of this issue. It's a polarizing issue. And I don't think anyone in our country, at least most people in our country, shouldn't condone racism or social injustice or police brutality. Right. But this is not the form in which to do it.
How bad is it when the LHSAA has to issue an edict on how to handle the national anthem at football games tomorrow night and tonight?
Yes.
I mean, you're filtering down to 15-year-olds. Right. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's always been that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from you see the way you see a way a player plays and you try to emulate it. You see what a player does in an end zone dance, you try to emulate it. So again, that's what's going to happen with the youth of America. They're going to see what their heroes are doing and they're going to emulate it. They have to define this. They have to find a better way to be able to get the message out about what they're protesting.
And hostility and division will grow, which is very, very unfortunate. We need to find common ground and work together and be a better society rather than dividing on a continuous basis.
And I don't think anybody is disputing or ignoring the fact that there is social injustice and racism in our country. And we have to do something to again, rid that of the fabric of our country. But I don't think this is the way to do it. I'm all for the protest. I'm all for First Amendment rights. I'm not for doing it during the national anthem.
Amen.
Guys, with that said, Saints with their best effort of the year thus far. 34-13 win over the Carolina Panthers, the most complete game of the season. Kenny, your thoughts?
Well, I think that it shows that there's capability there, and they finally caught a break. I've said from day one that this was the least fortunate, most unlucky team in the NFL based upon what's happened throughout the offseason until starting day. They got to the starting gate without Delvin Breaux, without Nick Fairley, without Willie Snead, without Terran Armstead. Then they lost Zach Strief right away. Then they lost Lattimore. It's unbelievable. But they faced a team in Carolina that didn't have Ryan Khalil, didn't have Greg Olsen. They lost Benjamin in the first half. Trey Turner went out, did come back in. And obviously they caught a team that had some of the same ills that they did. And then they played to their ability. I thought they had a terrific game plan. I thought the play calling was superb. Mm-hmm. They're figuring out this running back thing, and that's a good thing. Yeah. They get Snead back now. Strief is possible. Lattimore comes back. The Dolphins, well, they're an average team, and Ajayi's hurt. So 2-2 is what they had to be before the season started, as we've spoken of many times. They're right, solidly smack in a position to do that. They've got to take advantage of the opportunity, because if they do and they get to the break, schedule not quite as tough initially when they return. Young players gaining confidence with playing time. You can see what I thought before the season, which was that they'd go 9-7.
Yes.
I still think now they have a better shot at an 8-8 kind of season. Defense flexing some muscles. A.J. Klein has really been a tremendous addition to this defense. Cam Jordan is what we thought he was.
Yes.
But their margin of error is very small. They're very thin offensive line. Not having Willie Snead. Their wide receivers are not, Brandon Coleman is not a primary wide receiver in the NFL. Michael Thomas is, but I mean they thin in a lot of spots. They thin in the defensive secondary because of, and they're young.
Right.
P.J. Williams is basically a rookie starter.
Absolutely.
And Von Bell and Marcus Williams, who's done well. But again, these are all young guys, and so you don't know how good these guys are going to be. And I did think a 9-7 season, 10-6 maybe, but I'm thinking more 8-8 this year. Because they're injury away from maybe being a 6-10 team.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, guys. Speaking of injuries, and the situation with Nick Fairley really has shown its hand over the last since the season started. They're not the same team up the middle that they were. They miss his big body, his disruption up the middle. We had hoped that Rankins, Onyemata, and Davidson would be able to do that up to this point. Up to this point, they have not delivered, and that's something. It's hard to rectify that in the middle of the season. Maybe you can do it scheme-wise, but they've got to get a little bit more physical up the middle, in my opinion.
It's a domino effect, because now your 2 becomes a 1, your 3 becomes a 2, and so forth, and that's what's happened at that position. They're not very big up front to begin with, so they can get pushed on and leaned on quite a bit by other people. Fairley isn't a giant guy, but he plays pretty big.
Yes, he does.
So now, we're not talking about a Norman Hand, or Grady Jackson, or people like that.
They could use one, though.
But you could use a guy like that to hold a point of attack and free up your linebackers to make plays. What Rene talked about is the most prevalent thing with this defense, and that is you're counting on a lot of young guys, from both Williams to Anzalone to Lattimore to Rankins. That's 5 guys right there. But I didn't even mention Hendrickson or Onyemata.
Right.
And for that matter, Muhammad.
Right.
We could go on and on. I mean, that's how young this bunch is. Klein hasn't started. TRAHAN basically was hurt and didn't play much. So, I mean, this is a defense that's playing a bunch of young, untested guys. So one of 2 things will happen. They'll get torched or they'll get better. We'll see.
Yeah, defensively?
TRAHAN is solid. I don't think he'll ever be a special player.
Yeah, he is solid.
He's solid.
He's a solid first or second down linebacker.
And Anzalone is probably better at this stage. I thought it'd be a situational guy. He's starting and doing. Now, is he starting because there's no one there, or is he that good? You don't know.
Yeah, I like Robinson, though. I will tell you, there are times when I think Robinson should be on the field instead of Anzalone, but I understand they want him to grow.
Yeah, and he's made some good plays. He shows some athleticism. But when you you're bringing a guy in like a David Perry, I'm just using him, a guy off the street, it's telling you they're not happy with what they have in the defensive line, and they're trying to shore that up. And this early in the season, you're trying to still find parts and trying to come up with that chemistry. That's scary. I mean, that's scary that you don't have the guys due to injuries, bad decisions. Stephon Anthony let go, a first-round pick. You can't take hits like that, and they can't afford to. The past drafts, the past sins that come back to haunt them.
No doubt.
And that is costing you depth now. And, if you'd have made a different pick instead of Stephon Anthony, whatever. But, I mean, now you're paying for past sins, and and guys who spent money on free agency, you're paying the consequences now. But again, this is an 8-8 season. They'd have to be lucky to come up with a 9-7 or even better. But anything happen right now, and Drew Brees, 38 years old, he can't take as many hits. That offensive line is still patchwork.
Well, there's good news on the horizon. Lattimore looks like the best corner they have right now. We'll see what happens with Bro when he comes back. But as you mentioned, Streif and Armstead look like they're ready to come back. I don't know if I'd push them back this week. You got the bye week. Let them come in, be fresh against Detroit. You've got Sterling Moore that's coming back, and Willie Snead come back from suspension. So they're getting healthier as they go forward. You know, you got Bro come back, week 9, that he'll be back. So, I mean, hopefully by then, a lot of these young players will have grown really kind of under fire. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But, you know, the Saints have never really ever said they're in a rebuilding. They've been rebuilding for the last few years, and most teams will just, go out and just say, look, stick with us, we're rebuilding. They obviously they have not done that, and it's pretty evident that they are. I would agree with you, Kenny, on the running back situation, although I got to tell you right now, almost like they're force-feeding Adrian Peterson at this point. I really thought that Ingram really ran the ball well last week. I think he really left some carries on the sidelines, and I thought they would have been much more effective in running if they would have kept him in the game. Now, Peterson's got a little tweaked knee right now. We'll probably see a little bit more of Ingram going forward, and Kamara's proven that he can be a dual threat in the backfield.
Well, I've said from day one that Peterson is a guy that I don't know what you have him here for, because you traded up to get Kamara. He's everything you wanted in that position, and he's not just a third down guy. This guy can run from scrimmage.
Yes.
And ultimately he'll prove that. With regard to Ingram, the guy's coming off a 1,000-yard season, made himself a good receiver. He's always been your best pass protector. He's 27 years old. So why are you going to give up carries and playing time for a player, frankly, that's not only over the hill, but you got rather inexpensively because nobody else really wanted him? Now, I have nothing against Adrian Peterson. I'm all for him. I just don't know why you'd take away snaps and touches from two really good football players. Because if you break down the Saints as to who are their best players, Drew Brees, number 1. You can make the argument Cam Jordan's number 2. Maybe Michael Thomas, number 3. Well, then to me comes Mark Ingram. He'd be your next best player. And Alvin Kamara would be amongst your top 15 at this point already. So I'm not sure where you find the touches, the snaps for Adrian Peterson. As long as he's a good soldier, as long as he puts up with it, then I'm okay with him being here. But he shouldn't be on the field at the expense of these guys very often.
Right. And of course, if there is an injury down the line, which we've seen with running backs, it's good to have an Adrian Peterson there. But I think people have to realize he's not the Adrian Peterson of old. He doesn't have the burst. He can't get to the corner. Last week, the commentators were talking about the fact he's hard to get down. I get that. He was played a much more physical role. But can he keep that up for 16 games? I don't know if he can.
I watched practice real closely, and I was really trying to convince myself, why did they bring him in? Was it for a locker room presence? Or it's because Adrian Peterson, everyone thought, he's a future Hall of Famer, ready to step in the Hall of Fame. But for what he did, Travaris Cadet was more valuable to this team as a receiver, kick returner, and maybe not the runner, but he did more for the team than Adrian Peterson. And I've been trying to see, where does he fit in here? And the only thing I can say is they brought him in, his name, as a leader, but what he's done so far, and force feeding is about the best way you can describe that. They've tried to put him in and give him the ball to justify him being here because of what happened in week 1. But I don't see, I just wonder if as the season goes on, how much more or less they're going to use him.
Yeah.
And I think I can see another back coming in here, and because productivity, people were saying, will he get 300, 400 yards? The way he's going right now, I don't think he'll get 150 yards rushing for the season.
With age comes wisdom. And I covered my first training camp in Vero Beach in 1980. And what I learned over a long period of time is don't pay any attention to training camp. Don't pay any attention to preseason football.
Right.
It doesn't tell you much.
Right. With that said, guys, when you look at the defensive backfield right now, obviously you got some guys coming back from injury. Lattimore is going to be huge. Ken Crawley finally getting a chance to get on the field. You guys both saw training camp. Everything that I heard was Crawley was among the better players at training camp in the defensive backfield, but yet they started Devontae Harris over the first 2 games. Now look, you had an erratic Cam Newton last week who still doesn't have the ability to be able to throw the ball accurately. Otherwise, there may have been some big plays down the line, but Crawley, again, led the team in tackles, and I thought he played a pretty good game last week.
Yeah, he covered pretty well. I don't think Carolina has receivers that can hurt you, frankly.
Right.
And Benjamin got hurt. So, but no, clearly he performed better than Harris had previously. Coaches have a lot of tape to look at on a regular basis. As I mentioned earlier, preseason games don't mean much except for evaluating young players on the field against players that frankly aren't going to play in the regular season that are on the other side. But certainly they like his length, has some physical ability. So, well, look, I'm hopeful that he can be that player. Yes. We know what Sterling Moore is. He's a guy. Yeah. He's your fifth guy maybe if he's on a good roster. And Harris, I'm not sure about.
Right.
I was very impressed. Devontae Harris and Crawley are doing training camp. Very impressed with the leap they made from their rookie year to where they are now. P.J. Williams, he's done a great job. And again, he's basically a rookie because he's been injured so far. Marshawn Lattimore, he didn't play a lot at Ohio State except for his senior year, so he's kind of learning as you go a little bit. And he's going to be making some rookie mistakes.
You can see he's got the physical too.
He's already their best corner.
Yeah, he's got a physical skills, but he's going to make some mental errors and things because he just hasn't seen it yet.
Right.
But potentially, when Stelvin Breaux comes back, that's going to mean a lot.
Right.
I think that's going to really mean a lot. But Crawley, I tell you, Crawley and Devontae Harris coming in as undrafted free agents and seizing the opportunity, I was really impressed, and I was really, really impressed with what I saw this past doing 2-day OTAs and things like that, how far they have come since last year.
But we have to be careful about Delvin Breaux.
Right.
He only played in 3 games last year. And by the time he comes back, he basically will not have played for over a year.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you can place in terms of expectations on performance.
No, I agree with that. Because, and especially last year, kind of rushing him back, and then all of a sudden, again, he's gone again. So I would definitely agree with that. You don't know what you have yet until he gets in. And, again, his whole style is a very physical style. Again, the ability to be able to jam up receivers, use his body, use his strength. And, of course, last year he didn't have the lower body strength to be able to get that done.
Right. He's a guy that I love him personally. He's a terrific young man. I had him throw out a first pitch in Biloxi for our Saints Hall of Fame weekend this past summer. Delightful wife and young child, and just a great story, too. I happened to cover him when he played high school football. So to see him where he's at is great. Not on the sideline hurt, but to see him in pro football.
Sure. Guys, it's a little bit early to say must win, but it's got to be a must-win on Sunday, right?
Well, we say this all the time. It's been a must-win every week since they lost their opener, which I thought was a very important game. But the Vikings are pretty good. And if they have a quarterback, they're real good. They dismantled Tampa Bay this past week. New England's New England. Even though they're 2-1 and got by the Texans, they're still a great team. But Carolina's not, and neither is Miami.
Right.
And you're favored in the game. That, to me, is everything. You have to win the games that you're supposed to win. If you don't win those, you got no chance.
Right.
Detroit's going to be a tough game when they come back.
Much tougher than they thought going into the season, right?
That's going to be a tough game.
Yeah.
But they do need to win this game. They need to win the games they're supposed to win. But I'm still a little concerned about Armstead, and I know, coming back, this is going to be very soon. I don't know how long it's going to take him to knock the rust off. And that injury he had was pretty significant. Yeah. And Zach Strief has been through the wars. His body's pretty beat up. I think he's coming back because he's a warrior. He wants to play. But I don't know how good Strief and Teron Armstead are going to be when they come back. They're going to be better than anything else they have mentally. But I don't think you can look for instant success as soon as you plug those two guys. Like, wow, the offense is going to take a tremendous leap, as far as what they can be able to do. I just think it's going to take a little while for particularly Armstead to come back to what expectations are, to what people think he's going to be able to do. Zach Strief just got hurt a couple of weeks ago, but I think they're going to be both going to be playing at 80-85% when they first come back. It's going to take a while.
Yeah. And I agree with that, but we didn't hear Ryan Ramczak's name one time last week, which means he played well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So I think they may have something there too.
Right, no doubt. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guests tonight, Kenny TRAHAN and RENE NADEAU of CrestCitySports.com. Got to check out the website. We'll take a break. We come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the LSU Tigers, Tulane Green Wave. Hope to get to the Pelicans and maybe a little high school football. We have a shot tonight as well. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or amcofencecompany.com.
TikTok Cafe, located on Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our menu offers breakfast dishes like our Western omelet made from scratch biscuits, grits, egg sunny side up, and lunch specials like our homemade cheeseburgers with a side of golden brown fries. Don't forget about our weekday lunch special and that every Tuesday is steak night. TikTok Cafe, open 24/7 at Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guests tonight, RENE NADEAU and Ken TRAHAN of CrescentCitySports.com. Guys, LSU 35-26 over Syracuse was not an impressive win. Again, the biggest thing that sticks out about this team right now is in the trenches, especially along the offensive line. The offensive line has not been able to handle Mississippi State. Obviously, again, struggled against Syracuse last week. You're going to tell us a little bit about Troy as we go forward. And when you get into the meat of SEC play, I'm a little worried about how the Tigers will be performing on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, you hope you're going to get a couple guys back that can maybe shore up the defensive line a bit. But, I mean, that's got to be something that they're going to concentrate on over the next 2 years. I realize losing players to the pros over the last couple of years, and then losing players before the season starts that you were counting on to be part of the offensive defensive line have hurt them, especially on the offensive side. But it's going to be a tough road to hoe for this team going forward as they get into SEC play with the players that they have right now on both sides of the ball.
Too many defections, obviously. Suspensions,
yes.
Clearly. Misevaluation. And you're right, it's all about up front. And that's why they can't compete with Alabama in recent years. But now they've taken a step further back because they're not as good on the offensive line as they were last year. And they're not as good on the defensive line as they were last year because of injuries and defections and misevaluations. Pass protection against Syracuse was poor. But when they had time, they make plays. But the interception that Miles Brennan threw, look, it's on him, but he had a guy in his face right away. And again, it's not like they're a passing team. They're a running team by and large, window dressing, shifting all over the place to run the football by and large. When they do throw, they're throwing pretty successfully, and there is no quarterback controversy. Danny Etling's the starter, but Miles Brennan's going to play.
Right.
As
he should, right?
And if everything goes right, he'll be a 3-year starter after this. He's got some talent. So no problem there. Receivers so far a little bit better than I thought they'd be. I give them some credit there. Linebacker play, nominal. Secondary play, a couple of spots pretty good, other spots maybe not. Keep in mind, Mississippi State got dismantled by Georgia this past week. Maybe that should tell you something.
Yeah.
This is an LSU team that's going to have to fight, scratch, and claw to get to 8 wins in my estimation.
I grossly overrated LSU. I thought they were realistically at 10-2 and 9-3 team. I don't think that's going to happen. They're closer to a 7-5 team.
Is it because of the defections along the offensive line?
Well, I'm going to tell you something too. Much like an NFL team when they hire a new coach and new general manager and everything, team rules had to be addressed. And Ed Orgeron came down and lowered the boom and maybe changed things that needed to be changed. And some people didn't like it. I'm not saying that's why they left, but that's the reason why some of them left.
Yes.
And keep in mind too, 36% of the 2-deep depth chart, offensively and defensively for LSU, are freshmen or redshirt freshmen. So you're talking about the Saints, having new guys. That's redshirt freshmen and true freshmen who never played before. So you get to color any way you want and say, we got guys that are good enough to start at guard and stuff. Look at they moving guys in, a couple of freshmen, Sadiq and Ingram are starting. They should be redshirted this year, both those guys. Then you got Adrian McGee plugged in there, and he was a guy that was second or third team, closer to third team, and he's starting. You got guys starting that were going to be afterthoughts, guys playing in the winning moments of a Chattanooga game. They're starting now. I agree that the wide receivers chalk is good, and the fact that they've opened up the offense and going to their tight end, Foster Moreau has been used a little bit more and things like that. I didn't think they thought they would do without Darius Geis as much as they are, but the thing is that things that had to be done are being done, and it may cost some wins this year because suspensions early in the year, 15, 16, 17 suspensions, that had to be done. And things that Les Miles, the way he ran his ship, things changed a little bit. But Miles Brennan certainly has to get reps as much as possible because he's one snap away from being a starter. And I was also wrong about this. I thought McMillan would go in if anything happened to Danny Etling long range. That wouldn't happen. Miles Brennan would step right in. And you got to get him ready. If he goes down against a Florida or an Auburn or an Alabama, all of a sudden it's Miles Brennan's show. And you don't want him going in like a deer in headlights. You want him at least getting used to playing in a situation where he's got to take control, not just mop-up duty. You want to get him in, and that's why they had put him in last week.
Yes.
Make him there when the game counts, because if he does have to go in against an Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss, he's going to have to take control of this offense. It's going to be his show. He's going to have the keys to the.
I totally agree with you, Rene, and I agree with Coach O did. You have to play the kid. You don't have a. He's your backup. He has no experience. And again, going in, if something would happen in terms of injury, obviously he's got to step in. But next year, you don't want somebody coming in with no experience as well. So again, Etling is a starter. There's no doubt about it. But again, there are certain times within the game, he's got to get in. He's got to taste SEC. Look at a chance to see SEC defenses, and of course even against teams like Troy and others where you're expected to win the game. And of course, the game was on the line when he went in against Syracuse last week. And again, I thought he performed pretty well considering. As far as I agree with you guys in terms of the change in discipline and what's going on there. Obviously, when you look at what's happened with Coach Orgeron. He's going to have to go in, and he's going to have to be able to plug in next year with maybe some junior college players. But I've been saying now, since we've really had a chance to eyeball this team, that maybe the expectations were a little bit high for this Tiger team, considering the defections, considering what happened with players going to the NFL. And as you mentioned, almost 36% of the roster being freshmen and redshirt freshmen. You can't expect to be able to compete immediately in the SEC when you got that young of a team, when guys are 1 year out of high school. I mean, they haven't really been in an LSU weight room yet, so I think the expectations have to be tempered. I think you have to look over the next 2 years to be able to see where this Tiger team is going to be.
And when you step across that line, buddy, it is scary. It is loud and scary. And last time you put on a pair of cleats was in high school, or maybe even if you watch as a redshirt freshman, it is a lot different being between those stripes than just watching from the sidelines and learning last year, guys who were being redshirted. So all of a sudden, you're put out there and you're covering wide receivers, or you're blocking guys who are going to be first-round draft choices in the NFL. You're blocking the Alabama and Auburn and defensive linemen and things like that. It's a big, big difference, and Mississippi State has some good players. But my point is, these guys are learning, and the staff is going to just go with who they have right now. And you've had some injuries. Ed Alexander could help out at nose tackle. You're moving guys around now to play there. So this is early in the season to be mixing and matching and trying to find the right chemistry, but that's right where they're saddled with right now.
Right. Tell us about Troy.
Troy has a quarterback, Brandon Silvers, who can play in the NFL. He could be he's a big, good-sized kid, about 6'3", 6'4", got a big-time arm. He'll probably be about a fifth-round pick. They got a running back, Jordan Chun, who is touchdown guy. He's about 6'1", 235, 240, runs between the tackles, but he's got pretty good hands, can get outside. Vic Koenig is the longtime defensive coordinator, has been a lot of places, and he's going to move guys around. He's going to blitz. He'll even play kind of like a 3-3 stack defense, linebackers behind the three-down linemen, just to kind of confuse the offensive line, knowing that he's facing an inexperienced offensive line with LSU and trying to confuse him and get to the quarterback. But he will blitz. He'll move guys around. He'll show blitz and drop. Game I did for ESPN a couple weeks ago, he'll show 6, he's blitzing 6, and drop 4 and just rush 2, and just things like that. He'll do some zone blitz and different things. He's not really an exotic blitzer, but he just likes to confuse and have the guys thinking. And they're not a tremendously talented team. They're a good team. They're a solid team for the Sun Belt. They can be a good team in the Sun Belt, one of the top teams. LSU should win this game easily, but I did a game for Tiger Vision a few years ago where LSU barely had a fight for their life to come away with a win over Troy. So crazy things happen when LSU plays the Syracuse last week. Who would have thought that would happen? Troy is a good team for the Sun Belt. LSU should win by at least 2 touchdowns, 14, 18 points, but who knows?
Right. And then, of course, you got that gauntlet of the SEC after that. Kenny, should Tiger fans temper their expectations for this season? A lot of people after the Mississippi State loss were calling for Coach O's head. As I said on this program last week, the radio show last week, Coach O's doing exactly what he promised he was going to do. CEO, recruiting coordinator, disciplinarian, and he was going to allow his coaches to coach, allow his coordinators to coach. And the coordinators seem to have been unscathed in some circles in terms of what they've done in the losing effort against Mississippi State. Your thoughts?
Well, it's too early to push the panic button, obviously. And I thought before it started they were an 8-win team. I've tempered that, and they could be a 7-win team now. If it ends up being less than that, there's a problem. And there will be accountability, not in the changing of a head coach, but the clock will start if that happens, because this is LSU.
Yes.
And we just think back to 2012. LSU was an elite football program. They were still good in 2013. They're nowhere near that now. They're a mid-level team in terms of top 25. They're more like a top 30 to top 40 team, teetering on the top 25, maybe in it at the bottom end, but that's not what people have come to expect. Therefore, when expectations are raised, disappointment is huge when you don't deliver. As a result, you simply have to wait until the final product is produced, which means what's the final ledger at year's end. When you look at the talent on hand, I'm not sure that they can get past 7 or 8 wins, because I don't know that there's a ton of talent on hand, even if these guys are healthy. Ed Alexander with a hand, Rashard Lawrence battling to come back. The suspensions, you're not going to get those guys back. And LSU has not revealed why, for several reasons, not the least of which is to protect the young men. And because I know for a fact that there's a couple of cases that are pending about what's happening with a few of these kids who have appealed a few things, and I'll leave it at that. So, look, we don't always report everything we know, because we have sources and people tell us things in confidence, and I'm not going to reveal that when people have given me information. But that's kind of the way it is. Ed Orgeron's bearing the brunt of it. This was a program that needed to be fixed, and it needed to change. You had change. This guy was your third choice. You go with him, and you see what happens. We all want him to succeed.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you real quick.
Sure.
Doing the Troy game a couple weeks ago, as a guy Kenny will remember, Kurt Kelly, who played at John Ehret. He's a sophomore offensive lineman, and they think a lot of him. They lost Antonio Garcia to New England Patriots, and they feel like he can fill that role and be a good player. Kurt Kelly will play offensive line for them. He plays guard and tackle, and he's a local guy.
Yes.
I think local fans will remember from John Ehret.
Tulane 21, Army 17, pivotal win for the program. That final drive was a real confidence builder, and one that I think that when you look back in Tulane history, people will look at this drive as one of the great drives in Tulane history. I'll take you first, Rene. Look, a lot of people have been waiting on Tulane to turn the corner here. I'm not saying Willie Fritz has turned the corner. That was a huge win for the program.
That is the kind of win that really picks up the confidence. It showed the confidence in Willie Fritz in his offense that I'm not going to kick a field goal, I'm going for it. And that showed, that really, this team has so much going for them right now. I know it's early in the season. I would be extremely surprised if they don't get to 6 wins and qualify for a bowl game, because they're playing well. The offensive line is better than it was, and that was the really weak spot the last few years, Achilles heel. Leglu and Junior Diaz are good, and they Corey comes in, and they got a freshman from Jesuit doing a great job. So they got Corey Dublin, and they built their offensive line solid. Their defense is doing a good job under Coach Jeff Curtis and Jack Curtis, and I think that really there's bright days ahead. There's a schedule for Tulane that they can compete with and win 6 games or 7 games. Right. And I think with the way the offense is running right now, really I see a lot of good things ahead. And they got 2 quarterbacks. Brentley came in and did a good job.
He did.
And when you got 2 guys you feel comfortable with, boy, that says a lot.
Yeah, but Banks the real deal, isn't he?
Oh.
Well, that's it. You can stop right there. 19-play drive, 3 4th down conversions, 4 third down conversions, all because you've got a playmaker at quarterback, which they haven't had in a long time. And a guy that was less than 100%, tried not to run in the first half to protect himself, but when the game was on the line, he did what he had to do, and his team won the game because of him. This is a drive that's going to be remembered for a long time to come. Yes, I've put it in perspective. It's Army.
Yeah.
Army's not terrible, by the way. They beat Navy last year, and they're not terrible by any stretch. They're not anything outstanding either. But the way you won the game, the last time you've done that was when, can you say? And the last time your quarterback made plays with his feet and with his arm like that in a game to win a game when it mattered, when was that?
Yeah.
And, of course, it was at home before not a lot of people. And that's the salient point. Willie Fritz has said from day one, we've got to earn their trust. We've got to earn their support. It's been a long time when you've had 5 winning seasons, basically, in 35 years. Renee's right. Offensive line's better. Quarterback play is much better. Defense is still good enough to compete with. Obviously, running backs are pretty solid. They're seniors right now, so they're going to have to replace them. But you start counting wins. I don't think they can beat Memphis, South Florida, or Houston. That's 3. But you still have the room to get to a winning record or a 500 record at 6-6, where the other teams on your schedule. And I think some of those others aren't as good as they were last year, with the exception of SMU, who's a little bit better than they were last year.
Eric, I'm going to tell you this too. Looking at recruiting, they are getting commitments now from kids who are looking at the Memphises, and the more the teams that you're playing against, the South Floridas, you've had kids that looked at Miami and Tennessee, so they're getting a better grade of recruit now. The 3 stars, and I don't get too much into that, but they're getting good players that can come in and play, and they are getting some really good players from around the New Orleans and Louisiana area.
They got a bye week this week, then they got Tulsa after that. Obviously, it's good for them to be able to heal up a little bit, but you go into this bye week now feeling pretty good about yourself.
Well, you do. Tulsa's beaten you like 10 of 11 times. So they've been a real problem for Tulane, but they're not as good as they've been. So this is an opportunity, and you're off a bye week and you're at home. So to me, you always talk about these must-wins. It's a phrase that's overused, but this is a big opportunity for Tulane.
Out on Airline Drive with the New Orleans Pelicans, a lot of optimism right now, aren't there? I mean, more optimism than we've seen in a long, long time. You know, toward the end, if you weren't paying attention with the addition of Rondo and Ian Clark and Tony Allen, of course, Dante Cunningham re-signing, all of a sudden, you know, I'm not going to say that they're a great club. They're a pretty good club that if they play together, they have a chance. The problem is the rest of the West has gotten so much better, you know, even with the talent that you brought in. But, you know, they have a tough start with a really tough schedule. There's no doubt about that. But you know, I want to buy into it. I want to buy into the optimism out there. It'll be interesting to see how these guys kind of coexist on the floor, especially when the rest of the league is kind of going small and they're going in the opposite direction. Kenny, I'll take you first. Your thoughts on the Pelicans?
Well, you'd like it if the schedule makers wouldn't stick you with Golden State, Cleveland, and San Antonio early on.
Yeah, put
like
you on the
they do
road,
every
right?
year, it seems, right. And so that makes it difficult. They're better than they were last year. You temper it a bit because I wonder, where's their perimeter game? Who's going to shoot the basketball for this team? They're better defensively. Tony Allen can defend, and Rajon Rondo can still defend, although he's certainly a player on the downside of his career and isn't a shooter by any stretch. And we'll see. Ian Clark, look, how good is he really? It's hard to project those guys, kind of like Solomon Hill last year, because they played bit roles on other teams. Hill wasn't worth the money he was paid, and they make a big deal about losing him, which tells you you're probably weak at that position. So we'll see. Cousins has lost weight. Yes. He's devoted. We'll see how he and Anthony Davis work together. I think they're better. I think they make the playoffs. As a bottom team, a 6 to 8 team, which isn't bad. That's improvement. Is it enough to keep the band together long term? Stay tuned.
Yeah, no doubt. Tough schedule, but again, an opportunity for at least people to be excited about the Pelicans. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they can't compete with the upper echelon OKCs and Golden States and San Antonio, but I was a little skeptical when Rondo and signed Tony Allen and all, but I think they're going to mix in well. They're veterans. They've been around. They've seen a lot. And I know if you could place a premium on that. That means a lot sometimes in the locker room and work ethic and how younger players look up to him. Cousins seems like he's committed. He wants to win. He's going to have recruiting guys to come here.
Right, he's all in.
He's all in, buddy. He wants to be here. And
for now.
Yeah, and I mean we'll hope that lasts. But I think that they're not very deep, and hopefully Drew Holiday is getting him back. That's going to mean a lot. And he won't have as much in the shows with Rondo now in the lineup, but they can certainly make a leap into that 6 or 7 spot.
Right.
There's a chance. They're going to have to hit stride and get teams on the right night. And can they beat a Golden State or I don't know. They could beat It could beat a San Antonio team when they're having a good night and things like that at home. But they're going to have to steal 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 wins along the way to get where they want to be.
And another key that people aren't talking about: how does Holiday play off the ball for the first time in his career?
Yeah. And look, one thing I do like is the fact that these guys have come together, Los Angeles, Louisville, here in New Orleans, that they're practicing together, that they're trying to work out together, because chemistry is going to be a big thing on this team. When you start bringing in guys from other teams that have different roles and you're trying to hodgepodge a team together, there's going to be a learning curve for these guys to play together. So hopefully, again, they won't get too far behind in the standings when they start off with the first 12 games, which is very difficult when between being on the road and playing some very, very top-notch teams out in the West, and of course Cleveland in the East. Let's head to the phone lines. 866-3200 is the phone number. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys, just got a question to ask the panel. Based upon the Saints' records, what do you see the future of Sean Payton and Drew Brees? Meaning, if they go 10-6, everybody stays. If they go 9-7, maybe Drew Brees walks, Sean Payton stays. In terms of the record, I'd like to hear your opinion.
Thank you. That's an interesting question because, again, $18 million of dead money for Drew Brees already. Mm-hmm. He's going to demand $25 to $30 million. Can you wrap up $48 to $50 million in one player on your salary cap? And then the question is, again, if you're not winning, will Brees want to stick around with maybe just a few years left in his NFL life? And then, what's the situation with Sean Payton going forward, who, again, is rebuilding this team? Will he get a chance to be able to finish it? Kenny, your thoughts?
Well, I've said from day one that the two are joined together, and I believe that they will be joined together, and they'll be apart together. I think if one leaves, the other leaves. I think if one stays, the other stays. And it's all contingent on how the team does this year, no question. They're 7-9 again, change will happen. If they're 9-7, there's a chance they'll be back. If they're better than that, I think they're both back. I don't know how you could break up a team that's 10 wins or better and in the playoffs with a quarterback playing at a very high level and a coach that's obviously presided over, as you've said many times, the rebuilding process to where you finally turn the corner. So I think they're joined together. I think they're both back or neither one's back.
9-7 is the deal. 8-8 is a gray area. 9-7, 8-8. If they are 9-7 or less, if they're less than 9-7, they're gone. They're both gone. And keep in mind too, Zach Streif and guys like that. I mean, they're getting up in age. You could see a flush of quite a few players moving on after this. If they do wind up 8-8, 7-9, it's for sure. But they'd have to get to 9-7 to keep this together, to keep this group together. Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Drew Brees will be 39 years old next year, and it's time they draft a quarterback in the first or second round, not third round, not a Garrett Grayson. Go for all out and jump both feet and get a quarterback of the future.
Are you surprised that throughout the tenure of Sean Payton, he's never been able to develop a young quarterback?
Well, I'm surprised to a degree because he's a brilliant offensive mind. At the same time, it's all about talent, and I don't think they've had a guy that they brought in. I mean, we think about the Canfields of the world. I mean, there have been young guys that they brought in, but they just weren't good enough. And Grayson was simply a miss.
That's a lot.
And you can get a good quarterback in the 5th round, 4th round, 6th round. People do it all the time. Yeah. All you need to do is look at who the best quarterbacks in the league are right now. Aaron Rodgers was obviously an early pick. We know about Tom Brady. We know about Drew Brees. But I can go down the line, and there's a whole bunch of guys that weren't number 1 picks.
Yeah.
There's some quarterbacks, if the Saints do fall in that 6-6, 6-10, or 7-9 range, there's some really, really good quarterbacks coming out this year in the draft that would look good in black and gold with the New Orleans Saints.
Hal is in West Wego. Hal, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Hal.
Hey, you guys. First, I love what you're doing on the show every week, so I like tuning in.
Thank you very much.
And I hope this isn't like a frivolous question. I just wanted to get you guys your opinion. A buddy of mine and I last year drove to Wisconsin for that first LSU game, and what a mess. We were so excited. But as soon as LSU came on the field before the game, they were jumping up and down. It was like Dancing with the Stars, wanting everybody to cheer. And the LSU fans, there were so many fans, LSU fans in the stadium. And when Wisconsin came out, they just looked like they were there for work, for business. And the Wisconsin fans, when their team came out, they were excited. The people were sitting down cheering and stuff. And I remember thinking, man, we're going to kill this team. And, well, you know what happened. I just worry about this, like the celebrity status that a lot of these players seem to have. And like after halftime for that game, Wisconsin-LSU, when LSU came out, they're jumping up and down screaming, come on, cheer for us, like they were celebrities. And I'm thinking, I'm not your mama. Put your helmet on and go play football, So what is your opinion about whether or not the players take it seriously enough, knowing that Mississippi State against LSU, they were strong, they were serious, and they beat the heck out of them.
Hal, let me get the panel to answer that question. Thank you very much. Guys?
Well, you can certainly be passionate without being over celebratory. And also there's a time and a place. You know, the guys that get all excited about a first down and signal first down, that's ridiculous. What have you accomplished? You know, the guys that do things after scoring and act like they haven't done it before, or mock people, as Rene spoke of earlier, that has no place in the game. Players getting excited and passionate, I have no problem with, as long as they're focused on the task at hand. In the case of Wisconsin, it gets back to what we've all said previously. They were just better up front.
Yeah, they were.
And they would have beaten LSU the previous time they played them, had their running back not gone down and not played in the second half. They were simply better up front. Listen, I think there's more discipline there now. I don't think you can take a person's passion and a person's excitement away from him. You can temper it to a degree because there has to be discipline in a program. But at the same time, I think that there is a different approach now, and I think you'll see it on a long-term basis.
Yeah, and the thing is, with the Mississippi State game, I got to tell you, that shocked me like everyone else. But again, yeah, got a lot of young guys in there. There was a lot of suspensions. This is not an excuse, it's a reason.
Right.
He had guys learning, and I think in some of those guys, it was like a deer in headlights.
Yeah,
and
especially in Starkville.
They were not ready for it.
Yeah.
They were not ready for it. And, you know, sometimes when things are going bad, it snowballs. And that's exactly what happened. And they did get manhandled. I think we found out how poor the depth is at LSU on both sides of the line, and I don't think everyone realized it until that game. Yeah. That really exposed a lot of holes.
When people look at you, make a play.
Yep, no doubt. Let's see if we can grab this last call. Mike's in Houma. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. We got about a minute. Okay, Mike is gone. Guys, we got about a minute and a half. High school football this weekend. Any games we should be looking at?
Yeah, a couple of great games. I mean, certainly De La Salle Riverside and LaPlace will be a tremendous football game. John Curtis and Warren Easton at the Shrine on Airline will be another great game. These are 4 teams. All 4 could conceivably be in the Superdome playing the second week in December. They're that good. So to me, those are the really good games locally. St. James Santa Ma is a battle of unbeaten teams as well.
There's a lot of good talent out there. I say this every time we come on.
Yeah.
44 guys who played prep football in the New Orleans metro area or in NFL rosters when training camp opened up. There's a lot of talent out there. If you haven't been to a prep game in a while, do yourself a favor.
Guys, is it 50 or 51 players that from LSU that are now on NFL rosters? Is that what I've heard? Both.
I was looking at the list. I was looking at the list the other day. I didn't count them, but it's about 50.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. Again, it just speaks to where they're at. And again, the players they've lost to the NFL this past year in particular, glaring holes. They've been able to replace those guys previously, not so much this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, thanks so much for being with us. As always, one more time, Kenny, tell us about the website.
CrescentCitySports.com. You want prep? You're not going to find a better resource. You want recruiting? You won't find a better guy. You want NFL? You won't find better writers than we have where that's concerned with Ed Daniels, Les Easton alike. And, of course, if you want the Pelicans, David Grubb's there on a regular basis taking care of business. So we encourage you to go there. We think you'll like it. It's substantive. It's journalistic. It's not a sensationalist site at all. And you won't find us talking about any of this political stuff on that website in any way, shape, or form.
You'll save that for my radio show. There you go.
That's right. On this television show.
There you go, no doubt. Kenny and Kenny TRAHAN and Rene NADEAU, thanks for being with us on the program tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. We're also on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 o'clock every Friday night. And you can catch us on the Cox cable tier, Cox 130, at 10 o'clock on Thursdays and 2 a.m. on Saturday mornings. Catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO. That's weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. Also, you can get the TuneIn Radio app, which is a great way to take the show with you anywhere. Remember, all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can also be seen at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to our panel tonight. Always great. Rene NADEAU and also Kenny TRAHAN. Please go out and check CrescentCitySports.com. Make it one of your favorites as well. And also, I got to thank the WLE production staff. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, also Kenny Gino, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll check you out next week, hopefully with another winning weekend like we saw last weekend for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Have a great week.